Welcome in. Today we're taking a deep dive into someone you probably think you know, Joe Biden. We see the headlines, the sound bites, but we're going deeper than that.
Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the caricature of a public figure, right?
Exactly. And we've got some excerpts from a pretty in-depth biography here. And one thing that jumps out is the contrast
Oh, absolutely.
between, like, the Biden we see now
Right?
and those early years.
Definitely not all privilege and ease, was it?
No, not at all. And the biography digs into his family's financial struggles early on.
Yeah, something I think a lot of people can relate to.
Oh, for sure. But then there's this other detail, and it really struck me. Biden had a really severe stutter.
That's right. And it's one of those things, it's easy to read over it, but can you imagine
Yeah.
the sheer willpower to not just function, but to excel
Right.
in a field where, like, communication is everything?
Kind of an origin story thing,
Totally.
This massive hurdle to overcome. The biography even mentions him, like, reciting Yeats in the mirror to try and train his speech.
And see, that right there, that's character, isn't it? That kind of drive, refusing to be limited. It makes you think about how that resilience might play out later.
Because the challenges definitely came.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm not just talking political setbacks. I mean, losing his wife and daughter right as his Senate career was beginning.
Unimaginable.
How do you even process that?
Right. And especially at that point in your life when most people are still, figuring things out, it would have been understandable to just step back from it all.
Totally.
But the fact that he not only stayed the course, but leaned into a career of service, it really makes you think about how that experience shaped his worldview.
It's almost like you can draw a straight line from that loss to the empathy that he's, so known for.
Right. It becomes less of a talking point and more about, like, lived experience.
Exactly.
It's one thing to talk about understanding people's pain. It's another to have gone through something so profound yourself.
So we've got this young senator already marked by this unimaginable loss, and he steps onto the national stage in 73. Then he spends, get this, 36 years in the Senate.
Wow, yeah.
That's longer than some of our listeners have been alive. It's easy to kind of gloss over that period and just think, oh, yeah, he was a senator for a long time.
Right.
But what were some of the key things that happened during that time? Some of the roles that he had that really stand out?
Well, there are two areas that I think are really important, even if they're often overlooked when people talk about his career. One is his time as the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Okay, so this is where the 1994 crime bill comes in, right?
Exactly.
That's something that Biden championed at the time, but has become, really controversial in recent years.
Yeah, it really has. And it's a good example of how political climates shift and how policies that were enacted, even with what were thought to be good intentions at the time, can have these really complicated and sometimes harmful consequences down the road.
Absolutely.
The bill itself was a response to, this period of high crime rates. There was a lot of public fear around crime.
Right.
And it increased penalties for certain crimes, provided funding for law enforcement, and it also implemented the Violence Against Women Act.
Right, which has been praised for its impact.
Exactly. However, it also contributed to mass incarceration, particularly of Black and brown Americans. And that's something that, we can't ignore when we're looking back at it.
Yeah, it's a mixed legacy for sure.
Absolutely. Now, the second area where Biden really left his mark was as chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
Okay, and this is where we really see Biden the deal maker start to emerge. This guy who's known for his deep understanding of foreign policy and also his ability to work with people on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, and he led the committee for years. He was dealing with conflicts in the Balkans, the rise of China, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, love or hate his positions, you can't deny the guy's experience on the world stage.
Right, exactly.
And these experiences would become really central to his identity as a statesman and a key part of his appeal to voters later on.
So we've gone from overcoming a childhood stutter to navigating the complexities of the Senate to dealing with, like, major international crises.
Yeah,
It's quite a journey.
it is. And keep in mind, this is all before he becomes vice president.
So we've covered Biden's long career in the Senate, but now it's time to talk about what comes next, his time as vice president under Barack Obama.
And it's kind of interesting how a presidential campaign that, didn't quite gain traction in 2008 ultimately led him to the vice presidency.
Yeah.
It says something about his ability to adapt and find new ways to contribute.
It's that classic, like, when one door closes, but on this huge political scale.
Right.
So Obama chooses Biden as his running mate. What did Biden bring to the table that Obama needed at that moment?
Experience, for sure.
Yeah.
Decades of it.
Right.
Navigating the ins and outs of Washington, a deep understanding of how to get things done in the Senate and all those relationships he'd built over the years.
He was the ultimate insider.
Exactly.
Whereas Obama was this fresh face bringing this message of hope and change.
Right. So Biden provided that sense of stability, of experience. He was often described as a bridge builder, someone who could work with both sides of the aisle.
Right, which was, especially important given how polarized things were becoming.
Absolutely.
So more than just a figurehead vice president, Biden was really in the thick of it on a lot of key issues.
Oh, absolutely.
What were some of those policies where his influence was really felt?
Well, the Affordable Care Act is a big one.
Okay, Obamacare.
Right. Exactly.
Huge piece of legislation.
Massive undertaking. And Biden was instrumental in getting it passed.
Yeah.
He was known for his ability to connect with lawmakers personally.
Yeah.
Find that common ground, build consensus, even on those really divisive issues.
Right, and healthcare is about as divisive as it gets.
Exactly.
What else?
Well, beyond healthcare, he played a key role in responding to the 2008 economic crisis.
Oh, yeah, that almost slipped my mind.
It's easy to forget how close to the brink we were back then.
Right.
He helped oversee the implementation of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act.
That was a huge stimulus package.
Huge. Aimed at creating jobs, stabilizing the economy.
Trying to get things back on track.
Exactly.
But even in the midst of these political victories, personal tragedy struck again.
Yeah.
2015, his son Beau dies from brain cancer.
Just awful.
It's a reminder that even those in the most powerful positions aren't immune to that kind of pain and loss.
No one is immune to grief, that's for sure.
And understandably, I think, it led him to decide against running for president in 2016.
Yeah, I think a lot of people respected that decision.
Yeah, for sure.
It must have been incredibly difficult.
Absolutely.
So then we get to 2020.
Right, and talk about a moment of upheaval.
Oh my gosh, a global pandemic, a
Yeah.
deeply divided country. The sense of uncertainty was palpable.
And it was against that backdrop that Biden, at 77 years old, decides to run for president again.
It was remarkable.
It really was.
After all those years of public service, to step back into the arena at a time when the country seemed so fragile.
He positioned himself as the steady hand, the experienced leader.
The one who could, bring us together.
And it resonated with voters.
It did.
He defeats incumbent Donald Trump, becomes the oldest person ever elected president.
Historic election.
It really was.
And since then, his presidency has been marked by, some successes, some challenges.
It's with any presidency, right.
Of course.
Navigating the pandemic, passing infrastructure legislation.
Right. Those are big deals.
He's faced criticism from both sides.
As you'd expect.
But he's also accomplished some significant things.
He has. And it's still early to say what his ultimate legacy will be.
It's still being written, right?
Exactly. But one thing's for sure. His life, his career, it's been defined by resilience, empathy, and his deep commitment to public service.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy.
He is.
Shaped by both triumph and tragedy, and regardless of your politics, I think there's something to be learned from his story.
Absolutely. His ability to persevere through really tough times, to connect with people from all walks of life, to dedicate himself to something larger than himself.
That's a really powerful note to end on.
It is.
From a childhood stutter to the world stage, Joe Biden's story is a testament to the power of resilience, the enduring strength of the human spirit.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into the life and career of the 46th president.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening.